What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. I have an absolute bombshell story to share for y'all in today's video. Jesse Michels just released his latest interview with Harold Malgron. Now, who is Harold? I made a video discussing who he is kind of essentially a few weeks ago, but I'm going to include a little snippet of that in today's video to kind of, catch you up on who he is. I'll also put a link in the description to the full interview with Jesse Michels. I actually made a video about that earlier today. Again, I'll put a link in the description to that so you can go learn more about what's in the entire interview. But in today's video, I'm only going to focus on one particular story in that interview that I find to be absolutely mind-blowing. And it has to do with this.
This interview changed my life forever and will hopefully do the same for you. In it, Harold admits to directly handling UFO material that fell out of the plume of a Marshall Islands nuclear test. This is world history. It's the first time anybody of this caliber has ever admitted to handling UFO material directly.
What did it feel like?
It felt weird because it didn't feel anything we know.
He discusses getting briefed on other world technologies by Deputy Director of Plans for the CIA and Chief Architect of Area 51, Richard Bissell.
Now you see what I mean. This is exciting. And before we break this down even further with some clips from that interview, I do want to tell you, please hit that like button, Vetters. That really helps out the videos. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I put out new videos every week about the UFO phenomena. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I would tell you a little bit more about Harold Malgron. So, let me explain a little bit more about who he is, and then we'll jump into some of these clips from Jesse Michels' new interview. Harold Malgron, born 1935, who recently passed away in 2025, was an American scholar, diplomat, and senior advisor to U.S. Presidents Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, and Ford, as well as a key figure in international trade negotiations. With a background in physics and economics, he held high-level security clearances during his career, including roles overseeing Department of Defense projects on nuclear weapons and anti-missile defense in the 1960s. Malgron later revealed he was informally briefed on other world technologies by CIA official Richard Bissell, who oversaw secretive programs like Area 51 and Skunk Works. He claimed this occurred over 60 years ago, suggesting knowledge of non-human intelligence technologies, including recovered materials held by government and private entities. Notably, Malgron alleged that during a 1962 missile test tied to the Cuban Missile Crisis, the U.S. Navy shot down and retrieved a UFO orb, an event he linked to briefings from Bissell and Atomic Energy Commission official Lawrence Preston Geis. And Lawrence Preston Geis just happens to be Jeff Bezos' grandfather. That's right, the guy behind Amazon. Before his death in February 2025, Malgron broke decades of secrecy to share these insights, contributing to modern UFO discourse.
So I said, well, what am I here to find out? He said, well, he reached for some stuff sitting on his desk. These are things that have come down. And I'm looking at, sitting on his desk, round rocks,
So you're looking at like anomalous material?
Yeah.
Debris?
Yeah.
But debris or images?
Debris.
Wow.
No, he said handling.
Wow, that's amazing.
At Los Alamos, I was told by Lawrence, put this stuff in your hands, play with it, see what it feels like.
What did it feel like?
It felt weird because it didn't feel anything we know.
What color was it?
The color of something in space.
What's the color of something in space?
Depends on the light in the room or the light for the camera.
Was it Was it heavy?
Yeah, the objects were like, I mean, I picked them up, I didn't put them down, they went so heavy.
So let's make sure we're all on the same page here, right? There was a Marshall Islands nuclear test done, and during this, out of the plume of this explosion, some materials fell from a UFO, and Harold was able to get his hands on it. But more importantly, they tried to cover this up by releasing a second video that was scrubbed that didn't show that stuff dripping down, right? Why cover it up? And let me assure you, this story, it gets even stranger.
If you had been there without knowing how it was retrieved, would you think that it was at all different than like random rocks or something?
He didn't know how it was retrieved. It was, But he said, no, this is some of, he said, I have it on my desk just to, as an examples. I mean, he didn't say it for visitors, but whatever reason he had it there.
Was it emitting alpha, beta, gamma radiation, anything like that?
I don't know. I don't know if he must have known it was safe. I mean, he had all this instrumentation around. Anyway, so I just said, what have we learned? Because it does pertain to designing a missile system of what kinds of things can interfere with it. Or might emulate. We just need to know more. Who else is studying this? We need to know about knowledge in other quarters, China or wherever, Russia. We feared Russia's science more than China at that time. Anyway, he explained that this is not the first case. Other unidentified objects or phenomena, there's a history. Now, he didn't go into the history with me. He just said, do your research. So I said, so you're telling me anyway what the Navy says I can't know? Yes. He said, yes, but probably you saw the original. My bet is that part of the test, the video will have been scrubbed, which was, but, and he repeated, that's Navy intelligence, they live in their own world. Sometimes they think they're even more powerful than we are, but...
Do they still live in their own world?
Yes.
That's what everybody says.
Now, if this story is true, the implications are groundbreaking, right? Because if this isn't the first story, and there are many more, again, I highly recommend watching this interview. It is an absolute home run, grand slam, hat trick, Stanley Cup, World Series, Super Bowl interview that Jesse did. His best work, I believe, period. So I highly recommend watching. Again, the link is in the description. But let's continue because there's even more to this. Again, like I said, it gets even stranger.
There are a few key details of this story that fill in some gaps that Harold relayed to Pippa before he passed. Malmgren confirmed that the entire bluegill shootdown was an attempt to down a UFO. Malmgren explicitly told this to Pippa, his daughter, and Jeffrey Cruikshank. He also told this to Senate intelligence staffer Kirk McConnell, who I interviewed.
What Malmgren reported that he'd been told directly by Bissell is that we downed a UFO that was closely monitoring that test, and it tumbled into the ocean, and that the Navy picked it up.
So the American military knew they could bait UFOs with nukes and destabilize their flight paths with EMPs. See, EMPs disrupt local magnetic fields, It would even locally disrupt the magnetosphere of the Earth. If you're flying at incredible speeds in a UFO, you probably need to use some form of quantum sensing. This would allow you to use the magnetosphere of the Earth in order to navigate. Birds even do this. They use avian cryptochromes to quantum sense the magnetic field of the Earth and navigate home. This form of precision sensing would be necessary in order to navigate a UFO. So when you disrupt the local magnetic field, you could cause a UFO to spin out, lose control, and drop out of the air. Also, UFO propulsion likely requires megavolt range electricity and extremely strong electric field strength over long periods of time, which would require a power source that far surpasses traditional fuel or batteries. I think UFOs have a nuclear propulsion source. If the X-ray induced shockwave from the bluegill payload would disrupt the plutonium pit of an incoming nuclear warhead, it would also probably disrupt the power source of a UFO.
Like I said, it got even stranger. And it gets even more strange than this, because the actual properties of the piece of material do things that can't be explained. So, what is going on here? Wait till you hear this.
The second missing detail here is that when Harold was holding the UFO pieces Lawrence Geist had given him, they seemed to telepathically communicate with him. He heard words in his head when he felt the pieces. This is a very common trope in UFO world when it comes to people handling material firsthand. Malmgren forgot the exact words, but he felt like they were important, and that the material may have implanted ideas in his subconscious.
What? Right? Touching the UFO materials and some voices come in his head. He can't remember it. Granted, it's been a long time, but it telepathically communicated with him. The pieces, are these pieces alive? Does this therefore indicate that the UFOs are alive? This is definitely a theory that floats around the UFO community and has for a long time, but no one of Harold's stature or credibility has ever said anything like this. That's why this is so groundbreaking. I'm not saying this is true. I don't know. I've seen zero evidence. It's just his testimony, but this isn't just anybody's testimony, right? There's something behind this. So I have to be honest. This definitely gets me thinking, and it definitely just makes my mind run crazy thinking about this. And the story doesn't stop here. Check this out.
He also apparently thought that this was a test that Lawrence Geist had given him. He wanted to see if Harold would have this mental reaction to the pieces. Harold apparently passed. Once Harold passed Lawrence Geist's test and realized there was far more to this tag-along UFO phenomenon than met the eye, Malmgren had clearly graduated from his role as the missile cost assessment guy. He needed to get fully read in. That's when he received a full briefing on otherworldly technologies by Richard Bissell.
Who is Richard Bissell?
All right. Okay, so a few months after this series of episodes, Missile Crisis, Los Alamos, Richard Bissell called me up and said, I'd like to spend some time talking to you. Maybe Friday afternoons after work would be good. I said, sure. I knew who he was. I mean, he was deputy director of CIA, and he was in the news a lot because he had been the one who helped Kirkworks develop the U-2.
So Richard Bissell then proceeds to informally brief Harold on the UFO program and different stories and different cases that had happened, revealing to Harold, this is real. This is a real phenomenon. Not only is it real, we have pieces, we have craft, we may even have bodies, right? And this is, again, astonishing. So Again, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please check out the full episode on Jesse's channel. Again, I've said it a million times in this video, but links in the description. Go check out the full thing. It's well worth watching. If you're a fan of Jesse, it's the best work he's done. It's absolutely amazing, and that's saying a lot because he's already at a high standard. So props again to Jesse, and rest in peace to Harold, and my best to him and his family. I think this is a great piece of material to have about, you know, your late father or person in your family, right? To have something like this of them, right? So again, props all the way around. We'll see you guys in the next video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.